Hey folks, Nick here from Another BookTube channel, and today I'll be reviewing The Godfather by Mario Puzo. This has been sitting on my bookshelf for over a year. I bought it at a yard sale in the summer of 2022, but every time I would look at it, I just never felt a tremendous urge to read it. I come from an Italian family that made their American home in Brooklyn, so the Godfather movies are basically required viewing for my entire family tree. And the movies are brilliant. Part 2 is better than Part 1, and Part 3 is not nearly as bad as a lot of people say that it is. It's just not anywhere near as good as Parts 1 or 2. But the book didn't appeal to me all that much. At a certain point, though, I did get sick of seeing it on my bookshelf unread, so I jumped in, and surprise, surprise, it's a really, really damn good book. Let's get into it. I also promise that at no point during this video will I do a terrible Marlon Brando impression. Everybody thinks that their Brando Godfather impression is good, and they are wrong. The Godfather is the story of the Corleone family, a mafia family at the height of their power in New York City just after World War II. The patriarch of the family is the Godfather, Don Vito Corleone, an immigrant that came to America as a child to escape the wrath of the Sicilian mafia. Vito is approached by a rival family to make a mutually beneficial deal to distribute drugs in New York, but the Don declines. This decision sets off a chain of events that ends the decade-long peace between the families. I was really surprised at how effortlessly readable The Godfather ended up being. While the movies are great, I was concerned that the material would come across as kind of dry in this format, but Puzo really captures the intrigue of mafia politics very well and crafts an interesting, surprising story around them. The novel is broken into 9 parts, which are called books, the longest of which is Book 1, which takes up a third of the runtime. I think that Book 1, specifically the first 75 pages of The Godfather, might be one of the greatest, if not the greatest, introduction in not just book, but storytelling history. Even if you haven't seen The Godfather, you've probably heard through the cultural ether the idea that a Sicilian man cannot refuse a request on his daughter's wedding day. Book 1 in The Godfather covers that wedding, and it is the most absolutely perfectly written sequence I've ever read. At the wedding, we are introduced to basically every important player that we will follow throughout the book. Obviously, we meet Don Vito Corleone, the Godfather that earned his name by performing favors for his many friends, who in turn now owe him a debt to return a favor if ever called upon. Vito does not make threats and does not get angry. He reasons with people and hopes that they see things his way. If they don't, he'll have to make them an offer they can't refuse. At Vito's side is his right hand, Tom Hagen, who was orphaned as a child and taken in by Vito at the urging of his son, Santino. Tom is a lawyer, and despite not being Sicilian, has become so reliable that he's been granted the honorable title of consigliere to the Don. Tom's inclusion in the family business leads rivals to call the Corleones the Irish family, despite the fact that Tom is not Irish. Then there's Santino, or Sonny, the oldest of Vito's 3 sons. Unlike his father, Sonny is quick to anger, making him a less than ideal heir to the Corleone throne. Sonny's younger brother Fredo is an even worse candidate, simply because he lacks the brains and the stomach for the job. Their youngest brother, Michael, would be the ideal candidate as he inherited his father's coolness and rationality. However, Michael has no interest in the family business, going so far as to enlist in the war against his father's express wishes. I've just scratched the surface of the character list introduced at this wedding, and in each instance, we understand those characters perfectly. We understand everyone's relationship to each other, how they behave, and what they want. Not only that, but we're also introduced to the true depths of Vito's power during this scene. At the wedding, there is a line of people waiting to ask the Don for a favor, and these requests are wide-ranging in such a way that illustrates perfectly his reach. There's a request for violence against some local thugs, which is easy enough to accomplish. But there's also a request to get an Italian expatriate permission to remain within the country. And by accomplishing this request, we see that Vito has immense political power because that is a political problem. There's also a request to strong arm a movie executive in California to give somebody a role in a movie that starts filming in a week. And by accomplishing that task, we understand that Vito's power is not limited to just the New York City area. It's a very carefully considered set of requests that Puzo includes here, and they serve their purpose beautifully. I was also really surprised that the events of The Godfather take place over the course of 10 years, which I guess is also true of the movie, but it's just been so long since I've seen it that I had forgotten. The events are also presented non-linearly, so there's quite a bit of backtracking to better explain certain events. This non-linear approach is handled really well for the most part and is never confusing. This narrative choice to bounce around does, however, lead to my only criticism of this book, and it's a bit of a big one. The Corleone family is the star of the book, and everything that they do is interesting and really feels like it's propelling the book forward. But there are multiple subplots present in The Godfather, which, quite frankly, I think could have been removed almost entirely with no ill effects. I spoke earlier about the favor Vito did to get somebody a part in a movie. That person is his godson, Johnny Fontaine, a singer who's lost his voice and an actor who can't get a role. The entirety of book 2 of this book is about Johnny after that favor is done, and it has nothing really to do with the main plot and is basically just far less interesting. Johnny keeps coming back randomly throughout the book as well, and while his sequences are by no means poorly written, they were just not welcomed by me. Like, I did not want them. I wanted to read about the Corleone family. There's also another subplot involving a bridesmaid from the wedding at the beginning who moves to Las Vegas and starts dating a doctor, and it's completely unnecessary, particularly when we sit in on her vaginal reconstructive surgery. Seriously. But even though these sequences weren't as interesting to me, the narrative would inevitably switch back to the Corleones, and I would be gripped again. I guess you could say that just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in. See, I said I wouldn't do a Brando impression, but I never said I wouldn't do a Pacino impression. The main plot following the rise, fall, and rise again of the Corleones is a riveting read, and even though I've seen the movies, the additional details in the novel make it its own unique and essential experience. The descriptions of the criminal underworld and how they think and interact with each other are terrific, and I love the character arc for Michael. I'm going to touch on spoilers briefly here, so skip ahead if you don't want to hear this, but I loved how in the flashbacks of Vito, he talks about how he does what he does in the hopes that his children can become something else that's really important, like a politician. And in the end, when Michael takes over as Godfather, he says basically the same thing about his own children. It's just a really great moment that emphasizes the cycle cannot be broken when this is the life you've chosen for your family. Sorry to cut in here, but something I forgot to mention during the review is something that you might find unpalatable about this novel is that the Corleone family, and really like Sicilians as a whole, are portrayed as really, really misogynistic. Like, women are treated very, very poorly throughout this book, and it's not necessarily, like, there's no portion of it in which Puzo is commenting on it as a narrator, because he's doing everything just from the point of view of the characters. So it's never it's never looked down upon. It's always just taken as a matter of course. So that might, rub people the wrong way. It's just part of the characters. It's just another layer of them. So just something to be aware of. Now, I've come to the part where I'm supposed to assign an arbitrary and subjective grade to The Godfather, but I'm a little undecided. I think it's a truly fantastic book, but one that has obvious shortcomings that are hard to ignore. So maybe, against my better judgment, I'm going to have to give... hold on. Sorry, I'm getting a phone call, and it's somebody I can't ignore. Sorry. Hey, Tom. How's it going? How's my Godfather Vito? How's he doing? He's good. Oh, great. Really glad to hear that. So, Oh yeah, no, of course. I remember that I do owe you guys a favor. How could I forget? You name it. What do you need? Yeah, I'm actually filming it right now, and I think it's coming out really good. I think it's a pretty fair, honest review. Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah, no, yeah. We wouldn't want anyone to think that, right? Yeah. So, yeah, no, absolutely. Can consider it done. Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. Let my godfather know it's taken care of. Thank you. Yeah. So, as I was saying, the only grade for The Godfather by Mario Puzo is 10 out of 10, and it is the greatest book ever written. If you have a differing opinion, please don't put it in the comments for your own safety. Thank you very much for spending some time with me today, and remember, don't ever take sides against the family.